Georgia. Today we're introducing Georgia to Georgia's craft breweries. Today we are visiting Wild Heaven. We're here with Eric Johnson, the brewmaster and co-founder. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what your role is here at Wild Heaven.
Well, I'm the co-founder of Wild Heaven. Nick Purdy, my partner, and I guess it's been about 5.5 years ago that we founded Wild Heaven. Prior to that, I was in the bar restaurant business. I owned Trappy's Pub in Athens. Before that, I was a career horticulturalist, so I did plant breeding and growing and all of that. So I still do a little bit with horticulture, but anyways, we've been here in Avondale Estates for almost 3 years. We started off as a contract brewery, working with Thomas Creek in South Carolina, and very quickly outgrew that, and we've been brewing everything here in Avondale Estates for, like I said, almost 3 years.
Where did Wild Heaven come from, the name?
That's a nod. Both Dick and I have a musical background. I've played in Athens bands for a long, long time, and Dick was one of the founders of Pace Magazine, which is a well-known music magazine. Wild Heaven is there's an REM song that's called Near Wild Heaven, and so it was a nice nod to Athens, which has been part of our lives, and then also Georgia music.
What inspired you to start brewing? Like, did you do it as a home brewer? And then
I've been a home brewer for I was a home brewer for about 22 years before I started Wild Heaven, and so I started when I was a teenager. Actually, in Georgia, it's legal at 15. I don't think I ever really thought about doing a commercial brewery. Nick was, he was putting together a craft brewery, and I was his buddy that brewed for a long time, and it was he and another guy that were working on a project, and the other guy was mostly an extract brewer. I'd been brewing all grain at that point for a long time, and so he brought me in just as like, hey, can you help us with recipe development? I was just like an unpaid friend contractor, I guess. And the more time we spent together, that was probably 7 years ago now. It made sense for all of us to be part of that, the formation of that business, which ironically was 3 taverns. And the other guy was Brian Purcell.
Yeah.
Anyways, we worked together on that for a couple of years, and then I think the kind of beers that Brian wanted to make and the kind of beers I wanted to make were different enough that it made sense for him to do that, and for Nick and I to do Wild Heaven. I didn't want to just do Belgian beers. I wanted to do American beers, and ironically, those guys are doing a lot of American styles now too. They're dear friends of ours. Everything's they're like brothers. So, anyways, that's how I got into it.
Okay, when did you say that Wild Heaven opened its doors?
Here, we officially celebrate our anniversary in spring, but we broke ground on this in September 3 years ago. So we've been in this building for roughly 3 years now. Only 2.5 years of brewing beer here.
And what was the first beer you brewed here?
Actually, it was White Blackbird. So when we opened the brewery, here we had Ode, Invocation, Let There Be Light, Eschaton. Those were all in market. Special Winter had come out 1 or 2 years. And so we bought the brewing system. It was Terrapin's brew house. Before that, it was Sweetwater. So it's been in Georgia for a long time. I brewed on it at Terrapin for maybe off and on 6 months with those guys, just learning equipment.
Yeah.
And I was really apprehensive about diving into one of the beers that was fairly well known in Georgia. I didn't want to have the first beer be Ode and then have it not taste right. And so we had been messing around with the idea of this pink peppercorn and pear saison, and that was actually the very first batch that was ever made. The second one was Civilization. So it took us a while to get into the core beers.
Yeah.
Until I really, really felt good about what we were turning out on the system.
Okay, I have to ask, because my favorite beer by Wild Heaven is Emergency beer.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask, what inspired that? Because it's so different from everything else that you have, name-wise, can-wise, everything.
Yeah, and that was the first real collaboration that we did, and it was not a traditional beer collaboration where you're collaborating with another brewery. It's me and Paul Calvert, he was the mixologist at Paper Plane then, one of the guys involved with Victory Sandwich Bar, who's now at the Tech on the Road Club. And then Ian Jones is the owner of Victory. Those guys they wanted an approachable yellow beer, for lack of a better term, that like the bud crowd would not find it to be unfamiliar, but then the craft crowd would like really dig it because it was like elegant and nuanced and different but easy to drink. And so it was a beer that took a long time to get right, because I would make multiple little test batches. We've got a little 1-barrel system that we test batch on. Paul would come in and taste them and say like, I'm not getting enough lemongrass in this, or the malt backbone is not solid enough. And him coming at it as a mixologist who has a really, really good palate was really, really helpful. We probably worked on that beer for 6 or 7 months. And then Alvin, the designer who does all the Victory stuff, he does all the Ford Fry stuff, so like Sabirica, those restaurants, he did all of that. Had not done a whole lot in the world of beer, but because he was their designer, he came up with that can, and which is brilliant. It's completely brilliant art. And when we saw it, we were like, oh man, that's like, it is absolutely like nothing else we've ever done from an art standpoint, but it changed the way that we viewed the art for all of our stuff moving forward. So if you've seen like the other 5 cans that we've made, they all look totally different.
Yeah.
I want each one of them to be to kind of give a nod towards like that iconic poster art. It's just like really cool, whether it's French Noir or American Nouveau or whatever. But they're all like almost like frameable in and of themselves. Yeah. And that beer, I didn't expect that beer to be anything more than like something we make small batches of for Victory. Like they were going to put it into all 3 of their places, and obviously that's not what happened. It blew up and is now the thing we make the most of.
What beers are Wild Heaven offering now year round?
Right now it's still Ode, Invocation, White Blackbird. Well, actually, Invo is going to move to like warmer months only, and Wise Blood, IPA, and that right now that's the whole of the year-round stuff. Ode is going to be produced in a Ode to Mercy is about to be available only in the nitrogenated form in a can. So nitro will be, we'll roll that out maybe in a month or so.
What kind of seasonals are Wild Heaven expected to put out soon?
Okay, so we'll have a special winter, which is the Bullet Bourbon oak-aged version of Ode to Mercy. So there's 4 new barrel-aged sour beers between now and say 8 months from now that'll come out. And then we have Gravitational Wave, which is a enormous Russian barrel style made with cocoa nibs that are smoked over pecan wood and raspberries. It's Asian Macallan 18 barrels. There will be another hoppy beer that will come out in spring. I want to make an ESB at some point too, so that may be next fall. I did a collaboration beer with Cigar City here about 2 weeks ago, and that's going to be a weird barrel-aged Brett beer. So maybe mid-late summer on that guy. So yeah, we were looking at our schedule. I think it's like 8 different releases in the next year.
Oh wow,
So,
big.
yeah.
Where do you see Wild Heaven in the next few years?
Well, we're already in the early planning stages of building a new brewery. We've pretty much outgrown this one. We can add, I think we have room for another couple 120 barrel tanks. So that'll carry us up to about maybe 15 or 18,000 barrels here. And so we're looking at fairly soon breaking ground on another big brewery.
I know you said you were a musician, so how has that impacted Wild Heaven?
I think that probably the most significant ways are, it's just that we do approach beer from an artistic standpoint. A lot of my background too is culinary. It's the way that I think about beer, not in just a strict, we're going to try to make our version of so-and-so's beer, or what would we do if we made a brown ale, but viewing all these different non-traditional ingredients, which if I went through every single beer that we make and how we make it, they're very different from whatever is in the market. And in the the same way that as a musician, the records that I made that was part of it, wanted to make something that was unique, that was a contribution to, in this case, the beer landscape. I don't want you to drink a Wild Heaven beer and say, oh wow, that tastes exactly like blah.
Right.
I want it to be something that's very unique, and you're like, you know what, that's whether you like the beer or not is somewhat irrelevant. It'd be better if you did, but I'd like for you to at least say, that's something that's really, really unique, and it kind of pushes the boundaries of what I thought that style could be. And so it makes it fun.
Well, last question. All right. So, since you're a brewmaster, I'm a home brewer myself. What kind of advice would you give someone who maybe they were looking to slightly expand, their hobby into something bigger?
The most important thing I would say is that if you're not currently all grain brewing, I would move in the direction of all grain brewing as quickly as possible. And when I was a home brewer, the things that impacted my home brewing the most were working as hard as I could to mimic what commercial breweries are doing. So I had a little stainless steel head pump that I would actually boil off. So I'd recirculate the mash for 60 minutes, totally clarified before sparging and running off. I would learn as much as you can about water chemistry. It's typically the last thing that home brewers get into.
Yeah.
And I understand that. You've got to learn what all these different yeast strains do. You've got, 300 different malts to select from, God knows how many hops. Water chemistry is the number one ingredient in beer. It's water.
Yeah.
And it has a way bigger impact than you would ever imagine. And the difference for me between beer that tastes like commercially produced beer that oftentimes just tastes like home brew, is whether or not that brewer, in many cases, got the water right. And we're assuming that their sanitization is correct and temperature control was good enough. But like on Wise Blood IPA, I did almost 50 test batches. The last 20 plus test batches were only water chemistry. That's it. And it actually took that many batches to get the water chemistry right. And then when it was right, because there's such a huge impact on the way that malt and hops are expressed and experienced in a beer. So I would, all grain brew as quickly as you can. As you have an extra $50 lying around, get your equipment as similar to what's happening in a commercial brewer. And most commercial brewers, if you pop in there, or if you get to meet them, in the context of a tour, so many of us benefited so much from people, like in my case, guys like Spike that have been brewing forever. Kevin McNary from Sweetwater, they helped all of us out so much, and we learned so much from them. And I think you'll find the brewers in Georgia to be very generous in that respect, like talking you through what their system does and how they're doing it and how you can mimic that at home.
And thank you, Eric, for taking the time with us today. We really do appreciate it. And you can find Wild Heaven's Tasting Room hours on their website. You can find their beer at Barley and Vine.